Are you looking for a nice warming chili as the cold weather creeps in? I think I have the perfect solution for you, and it adds some fall flavors to the mix. I have SkinnyTaste Turkey White Bean Pumpkin Chili. 0 bites for this portion. And I'm going to show you how to make it on the stovetop as opposed to her version in the Crockpot. And that's coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I'm a home cook and amateur baker, and I am here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. And today's recipe is coming from SkinnyTaste. It's for a turkey white bean pumpkin chili. I figured chili is going to be good with the cool weather coming up. Adding some pumpkin, nice fall flavor can only help. So I decided to do SkinnyTaste recipe. I've tried it before, it's very good, but I'm going to do a slight different take on it. Her recipe, which is how I did it the first time, is a slow cooker recipe or crockpot recipe. And I'm going to do mine on the stovetop. So you can take slow cooker recipes, and if you don't have the time to get everything prepped, thrown into a slow cooker, or you just don't feel like it, you can always transfer it into a stovetop meal and vice versa. If you have a stovetop chili or soup or whatever, you can always turn that into a slow cooker meal as well. You just have to maybe alter a few things. But in this case, I'm not going to have to alter too much. So in her recipe, SkinnyTaste has this where you're going to cook the turkey beforehand, as well as the onions and the garlic, and some cumin you're going to throw in too. So there is some cooking before you even throw it into the slow cooker. So I decided, why not just do it all right on the stovetop? I have the time, so it's not a big deal. But if you do want to do it as a slow cooker recipe, you can check out her original recipe, which will be listed down below in the description box. Now, one thing that she has in her recipe that I am taking out, she has a ½ teaspoon of olive oil, which really wouldn't alter the bites or points, but I don't feel like messing with the olive oil. But I did calculate the bites and calories and macros with the olive oil from her original recipe. So let's quickly go over the ingredients that I have here. I have some cooking spray, some salt, some pepper. Those are going to be put in to taste. They don't have specific measurements for that. 2 15.5-ounce cans of white beans. You can use any white beans you want. You could change it up and not make it a white bean. You could do black beans if that's your preference. 2 pounds of ground turkey. Now, I was going to grind my own turkey breast, but I couldn't find turkey breast anywhere. I had a hard enough time trying to find ground turkey breast. You could use ground chicken breast. It's your call. It doesn't have to be turkey, but I figured sticking with the fall flavors, I would try to get the turkey and go with the pumpkin. Speaking of which, we have 1 can of pumpkin here, pumpkin puree. Make sure it's pumpkin puree and not pumpkin pie filling, because pumpkin pie filling has sweeteners and spices and things added into it that you do not want. It's 2 cups of chicken broth. We have a 4-ounce can of green chilies, diced green chilies. In the recipe, it calls for 4.5-ounce can. But I think they've reduced the size of the can of the chilies. A lot of times what manufacturers will do, instead of raising the prices, is reduce how much they're putting into the cans. And I believe that's something that they did this time, because now it's only a 4-ounce can. And I'm not even going to use all of that, because if you've been following this channel, You know that Paul's not a big fan of spicy foods, and even though these are mild, they might have a little too much spice for his liking, so I'm only going to use about half of that. There is 1 small onion that is diced. We have 3 cloves of garlic that are minced. I didn't actually mince them. I just took the jar of minced garlic and used that. 3 cloves is equivalent to a tablespoon. If you see cloves of garlic in a recipe and you only have the minced jarred kind, 1 clove is about equivalent to a teaspoon, and I usually heap the teaspoons just because we like garlic. I have 2 bay leaves here. I have a teaspoon of chili powder. You can alter that to your taste. There is a tablespoon and a half of cumin, and again, you can play around with that if you're not as big of a fan of cumin as some people, like Jennifer Lynn. You can reduce that if you'd like to. But I always suggest making things the first time as they're written and then playing around with it, because then you'll know, okay, it did have too much cumin for me, it did have too much or not enough chili powder or whatever. And there's also a teaspoon of oregano, dried oregano in there. All right, so let me just shuffle a few things around so that I can show you what's happening in the pot as we're cooking, and I will be right back. All right, so I have my pan heated over medium-high heat. I'm just going to spray with some cooking spray, and SkinnyTaste has you cook the turkey first and then move it into the crock pot, but because I'm not doing it in the crock pot, I am going to start with the onions and then add the garlic in a short time later after those have sauteed a little bit and gotten a little color. Okay, I'm going to turn this down now that it's gotten in there to sizzle a little bit. And you just want to cook these just until they start becoming a little translucent and have a little bit of color on them. And then I'm going to add in the garlic. All right, so the onions have gotten a little bit of color. I'm going to add in the garlic. In garlic, you just want to cook until you start to smell it, about 30 seconds. You don't want it to go too far, because if you burn garlic, it's going to have a very bitter taste, and that is not what we're going for. Okay, and I'm going to add a little more spray before I add in the turkey, because the onions have absorbed a bit of that. Okay. And then, whoops, you don't want the paper in there. And then we're just going to break this up as it cooks. And you're going to cook it until it becomes white, which is, as you probably know, when it has cooked through. Okay, now that I've broken it up a bit, I'm going to add in some salt to make sure that that meat is seasoned, and some pepper. Now, these you can do to your taste. You can do a little bit here and then add some later if you feel you need it. Okay, so just stir this around, get those seasonings incorporated. I don't know how many of you also watch my friend Bree on Balancing a Life with Bree, but she is often wondering about the difference of seasonings, spices, herbs, that kind of thing. Herbs tend to be the leaves, sometimes stems of the plant. Spices are generally from the seeds. And seasonings, while you could say things are seasonings because they're seasoning the food, seasonings are generally considered anything that enhances the flavor of the food as it is rather than changing it. So like salt and pepper bring out the flavors. rather than changing them, or even vinegars are considered a seasoning. But that's usually the distinction. Although in your home kitchen, I don't think anyone's going to come at you if you call seasonings, spices, seasonings, whatever. Okay, I'm going to turn this back up a little bit just to get it cooking a little faster now that I just didn't want the onions and garlic to burn earlier. But because there was so much meat in here, I'm going to ramp it up and keep stirring. So then I will be back once this is ready and show you the next step. Okay, that is looking pretty good right there. So the next step is we're going to take the spices, except for the bay leaves, and we're just going to sprinkle those all over the meat. If you've seen in other videos, I've talked about blooming the spices, where you get the flavor to like wake up. That's what you're doing by adding the spices in now and just stirring them around, letting them get some heat. Definitely getting that cumin. But you want to heat them up first before you add in the other ingredients. So that way it really helps to enhance their flavor rather than letting them get drowned in everything else. All right, so next thing, going to add in our beans. Going to add in our pumpkin. And I'm going to add in the chicken broth. 2 cups of chicken broth, low sodium. I always prefer using the low sodium just because I like being in control of how much sodium I'm using. And that way, if I need to add any more, I can, but it's hard to take it out once it's in there. Okay, so you just want to stir that around mostly to get that pumpkin loosened up with the chicken broth. Then I'm going to add in about half. You could use the whole can, which is what I would normally do if it were just me. But because it's also Paul having some of this, I'm only using half. And I will save the half for something else that I'm going to do, who knows what. Can definitely get a whiff of those chilies once you add them in there and they start to hit that heat. Can definitely smell them. And last thing for now, the last thing we're going to add in the bay leaves. Now bay leaves add a nice flavor to the dish, but you always take them out before you've served anything, so make sure you know how many are in there, because bay leaves are not very pleasant to eat. You just mostly want them in here to almost steep like a tea and give their flavor into the chili. You just don't want their texture in here. All right, so I'm going to let that come up to a boil. And then I'm going to turn it down to medium and grab a lid, because this is going to sit on the stovetop for about 20-25 minutes. Now, if you were doing the Crockpot version, you could do this on low for like 6 to 8 hours or on high for 3 to 4 hours. And when you are swapping out recipes from Crockpot to Stovetop or vice versa, that's one of the things typically in a Crockpot you would do anything on high for 3 to 4 hours and anything on low for 6 to 8. So like I said, if you had a recipe that is Stovetop that you wanted to make into a Crockpot or a slow cooker meal, Crockpot's a brand name, so that's kind of like Xerox and Kleenex. It's kind of become synonymous with them, but it is a brand name. So what you would do is just pretty much add all of the ingredients into the crock pot and turn it on to whatever setting you wanted for however long you wanted. You could bulk up the flavor like SkinnyTaste has you do here by cooking the turkey first and the onions and garlic and then putting them in. It would be a little more distinctive. All right, so it is starting to boil here, and I don't want it to keep boiling. So I'm going to push those bay leaves down in there to make sure we're infusing this chili. Turn it down to medium. Cover that, and I'm going to clean all of this up, and I will be back in about 20-25 minutes to show you the end product. All right, so it has been about between 20 to 25 minutes, I think around 23. And chili has thickened up a little bit from letting some of that pumpkin merge with the chicken broth. And one thing, when you do take the lid off of anything steaming hot or moist like a stew or a soup or anything, so you don't make too much of a mess like I often do, you try to lift the lid and turn it right over the pot so any dripping will happen in the pot and not all over your stovetop. I don't always do that, but that is the best for less cleanup. Now we want to dig out these bay leaves, because as I said, they are not pleasant to eat. You just want their flavor infused in here. And you could have pulled out tongs for this, but I'm not going to get that fussy. And there you have it. Now, there you go. Nice, hearty turkey white bean pumpkin chili from SkinnyTaste, but made on the stovetop. Now, SkinnyTaste has this set for 9 servings, and that's fine. Each serving is about a cup. But I, as you probably know, enjoy a bulkier meal so that it's satisfying. And for those following bites or points, nothing would change. You'd still be at 0 for a serving of this, whether you did a cup or a cup and a half, as I'm choosing to do it. I'm going to do it as serving 6. SkinnyTaste did it serving 9. But I figured I'd show you. A ladle, as I've mentioned before, is about half a cup, and you don't want to fill it all the way. That would be 1 serving for SkinnyTaste version of 1 cup, which is totally fine. But then mine, just an extra half cup, still 0 bites, 0 points, and a little more satisfying for me. But you could easily do this as 1 cup if you chose to. I did calculate the calories and macros for both, since the bites and points don't change. It's still going to be 0 bites on the iTrack Bites Better Balance plan, which is equivalent to 0 points on the WW Blue plan. So if you do it as 9 servings, a cup a serving, the calories would be 221 calories. The fat would be 2.8 grams. The carbs would be 17.2 grams. And the protein would be 28.1 grams. And that's for doing this as 9 servings, about a cup a serving. If you do it as I'm doing it, as 6 servings, your calories would go up to 332 calories, which is still not bad for the size of a serving you get. The fat would be 4.1 grams. The carbs would be 25.8 grams. And the protein would be 42.2 grams. So here you have a nice hearty chili using some fall flavors of turkey and pumpkin. You could also, if you didn't want to put in the chilies, you could take those out. If I couldn't find the chilies, I would probably do about a half a jar of like my favorite salsa. So there you have it, a nice comforting fall chili from SkinnyTaste. If you like this recipe, I hope you'll give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and are looking for recipes that you can use on a weight loss journey. Hit the notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. And share this recipe, this video, if you know of anyone who's on a weight loss journey who might find this useful. I hope you will share this with them. And speaking of sharing things, I'm going to share my Instagram handle right here. And you can join me over on Facebook in the two groups that I am a part of. One is Recipes with Roy, that I'm the sole admin on. And the other is Finding Our Way, W-E-I-G-H. And I am the co-admin with Jennifer Lynn from the Jennifer Lynn channel, as well as Bree Coleman from Balancing Life with Bree. We are the three admins over there, and there's a great group of people over there, lots of tips and tricks and recipes, and a lot of support. So I hope you'll join us over there. And I am going to go and satisfy my chili craving, as well as my pumpkin craving. So until next time, bye.